Well, hello, Sketchstone Nation. This is an unusual evening. Uh, you're stuck with just me. So it might be a little awkward. It might be a lot of silence. I've also had some technical difficulties. So basically, I'm going to run through our usual fun prompt, and then I'm going to do a little doodling and chat with you guys, and we'll keep it short and sweet, but I want to keep the momentum going. I want to keep you guys engaged. I want to look over the fun prompts. And there's a few things that I can chat about to myself and scream into the void, and hopefully get some feedback on, because there's some stuff happening. But we're not going to have music because the technical difficulties are stopping that. So it's going to be weird. Just buckle up. But anyway, so I can't do the theme. But anyway, if you're listening live, go ahead and talk in chat in the YouTube chat. We're also on Discord, and you can get the short link on most of our video links, and also you can search for us in the Sketchstone podcast. And of course, we are on Instagram at the Sketchstone podcast. It's instagram.com/sketchzone podcast. That's where most of our fun prompts are. That's where a lot of the goodness happens. And then, of course, we're here usually every Thursday. Sometimes it's just me. So anyway, I don't have the awesome theme song. So we're just going to go ahead and get started with the fun prompt. So this last week we had, it was a whale farmer. So this actually had quite a lot of interest, which I thought was pretty cool. We had some new folks chime in, and Shiloh was able to share some of this good stuff. So the first one here, we've got Joey Art Wall. Looks like some, almost looks a little bit like watercolor kind of markery scribbly tips, which I'm really enjoying. It's got a good simplified color setup there. I like the semi-transparent, but keeping it simple. It actually reminds me of from Super Mario. Remember that? It was like I think Yoshi's Island, I want to say, one of the ones that had like a super graphic look. But anyway, I really liked this one, and I'll have to stop briefly to chat in the window. But hey, Landon, and hey, Scribbler80, if you're there, if you got the link, you should jump on live. So I'm not doing this strangely alone, but that's all right. And then, of course, we have Shiloh, as Carlos would say, Maestro, please. But this is cool. We've got like a land-based. Oh, it's in your email, dude. Let me hang on, folks. We're gonna have Scribbler on, and he's saying that he didn't get the link. So give me 1 second while I drop him a link, and we will continue the show. But anyway, Shiloh chimed in with this awesome feed. I love the little hay sticking out of his mouth. All right. Let me just see if I can figure out. See, doing this by yourself is kind of tricky, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's kind of it's kind of the main key, the main learning device. The lesson for tonight is Jack doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So let's see if I can't copy this link, and yeah, guys, Shiloh went all in for this one. It looks really nice. I love, he always, as Carlos always comments, he always adds the little extra characters. And he's got the little dog there. All right, sorry, Scribbler. I'm trying to find the link here. I'm struggling. You know, Google being a tech company, they make some of the worst user interfaces I think I've ever seen. I find it incredibly difficult to navigate around, not just YouTube, but like Google stuff in general. Their interfaces are just incredibly stupid. So let's see if I can't copy this link real quick. Sorry, guys. Landon says, is Carlos off for his 50th birthday? Clearly filling in for some folks that aren't here yet. All right, I think I finally got this. So let me try and send this email real quick if you guys hang on. And maybe it'll work. All right, so we've got, and Landon, if you want to jump in, hey, Javier, check your GChat. There is a link there for sure, but I'm about to send it anyway. Yeah, go to your GChat link. There is an invite floating there. So anyway, back to the fun prompt. Let's reshare the screen and let's just stare at Shiloh's again for a little while because it's great as always. And I got to figure out where my chat went so I can see what all you lovely people are saying. It's a hot mess. All right. So, and then there is our very own Coconut Justice. He's got his little take on American Gothic. I can see he's got a little bit of a canvas texture going on, or maybe that's a halftone. No, it looks like a canvas texture. There's some discoloring, fading going on. I like that, giving it a little bit of a vintage look. You know, since I'm all alone and I got nobody to talk to, I might as well critique some of these. I would say, you know, maybe the proportions of the arm are a little off and the foreshadowing could use some work, but I actually really like the simplification of the heads. I think as making them humanoid farmers is a pretty good solution. It almost looks, funny enough, it almost looks like this is an iPhone photo of a painting. Because it's like slightly, just enough off kilter, like you would take it with your phone, and then there's like kind of the fading. But I also kind of really like that of the aspect of it. So nice work. You actually did 2 characters, so nice. Strange M _ I don't know if this is a new one, but I haven't seen this style quite before, but this is really cool. It's got like the cross-hatching pencils, cross-hatching pencil work, a little bit of color. I like the actual farm. It looks like he's farming some sea kelp and maybe, I don't know, what are those, like sea anemones or something. And actually one of my favorite parts is the like underwater scarecrow that's like a bucket head. a bucket hat and a t-shirt. So if I'm gonna say some critique, I would say maybe a little bit of perspective depth work here would be nice. I know we've got the perspective drawn on the box, but because we're underwater and you've started to establish the depth with kind of the hatching and the lack of details as we go further back to signify depth, you could lean into that even more. You could push into this a little bit more. You could have the perspective lines of the box coming even more towards camera. You could slightly angle the whale like even more 3/4 so that we've got a little bit more depth, almost like his tail's going back into frame. But again, these are all just rando suggestions. I like it nonetheless. So we've got Whale Farmer from Strange M. Welcome. Elaine Hartman Art. Check it out. This is an actual sketchbook. Looks like a little bit of mixed media. Maybe there's some watercolor pencils and obviously some ink. And I don't know, there might be some, maybe even some regular watercolor, or it's kind of hard to tell if maybe it's like a pastel or something that makes the white marks on the whale, which I really like. This is cool. It's almost like one of those little things that you get on like a postcard or something. And actually, I'd say kind of a similar thing here. If we want to push this further, we could deal with some layers. We could lean into the perspective a little bit. We could get some extreme foreground. Now, the thing that's interesting here is it's got like its own frame included in. So that sort of has set up the style of art and the style of what we should expect. But then there's these interesting things where the whale breaks the inner frame, but not the outer frame, as does these few kelp pieces. So you could have an even more extreme foreground kelp in maybe perhaps a darker color as if it's in shadow, and then some ones in the far background that are almost the same color as the water to kind of indicate some depth. But nonetheless, this is super cool. It's the kind of kind of retro slash it's almost like one of those things you'd see in like a cookbook or like an old school educational book that would have these kind of fun little pencil and inked drawings. So nice work. I really like it. Welcome, Elaine Hartman Art. All right, we've got Hada de Buja, Elaine Hartman Art. Hey, man.
Hey.
Welcome. We've got ready, everybody. Hartman Art. Getting a little bit of echo, so I don't know if you have the video playing or.
Yeah, sorry, I had to turn off a few screens here.
Oh no, that's okay. So I'm just going through these awkwardly talking to myself. Going through the fun prompts, but they're cool. We got a bunch of new folks this time around, which was really nice.
Yeah, cool. Growing. You're growing.
We are. This one has a literal farm on its back, which I really think is kind of fun. We've got the fields and there's some buildings. And then they included a process video, which is always really fun. Looks like the Procreate style capture.
Yeah.
But you can see kind of the different poses they tried and different colors and inks and laying down the sketch and then working through it, which those are always really fun to watch.
Yeah.
So actually, oddly enough, again, if I was going to give a critique, I would say the same thing as the other ones. I would say because you're establishing the kind of the sense of depth in these rolling hills and the kind of patchwork of the fields, maybe rotating this guy 3/4 so that we're looking more down his back, and you can get a sense almost utilizing the back of the whale as those hills as kind of a rolling landscape could probably be really cool. But you know, it's just a random suggestion. So.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Playing with space to kind of really accent that. He has a lot of really cool sketches in there too, like exploring.
Yeah. I haven't seen this. Look at this work. What? This is fun. We're going to have to come back to this. There's a lot of alpacas or llamas with Mario characters. All right. So that was the Whale Farmer. And since you're here just in time, now we can get the new fun prompt. So why don't you pick a few of these, or you could give your own that you've made up in one of the slots, and then we can randomize with another one, or any number of ways.
Huh. It's well, definitely character. You know what? In checking out some of your guys' later shows. I really liked when you started just going single, single, whatever you call it.
Just a single one.
Yeah, because I don't know, it sort of opens it up for, opens up your imagination, right? It lets you explore a little bit more. Doesn't narrow you down so much.
All right, we can roll with just character.
You know what? But that said, let's do an adjective as well.
Yeah, I feel like the adjective always helps just guide, because you could be a little too vague and then people get lost and kind of confused. So all right, let's see. We've got a tidy midwife. I don't know. That's I think I want to re-roll that one.
Tidy midwife, huh?
I think I want to re-roll.
Yeah, prompt me up again.
Okay, smooth. I like a cobbler, but smooth is kind of weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, here we go. A jittery cobbler.
Yeah, that's fun.
I think that could be kind of interesting. What do you think? Do you want to keep it, or you want to roll?
I'm good with a jittery cobbler.
All right. So we've got our fun prompt, folks. We're going to do a jittery cobbler.
So it's been a while since the last time I was on, and I was speaking to Carlos a little bit, and he was talking about how you guys change up the format. I think I caught in an older episode, or a relatively new. I think it was the first episode of the year, actually, that I caught.
Yeah,
kind of made that switch over a little bit. Have you guys been working on the front prompts during the thing, or are you guys still just sharing personal work? How has that been going?
It's been kind of mixed. So the intent is that we really want it to be like a demonstration show and kind of interactive thing. And since obviously it's all about talking about like artwork and process and all that stuff and projects that we're working on, we wanted to incorporate that more into the show. So the main intent is that if there's perhaps a long-term project or something that people can follow along with week to week, that we could be working on that. But if there's a break in that, or you just don't have an idea for that week of something you want to share or show, then the fun prompt is always there. As a demonstration item. And then Charlie's been doing a lot of really good, like he does a lot of software demos.
Okay.
So he's been kind of like just finding new packages of software that he really wants to show. He did man, I'm already forgetting what he did, but he did a couple of modeling programs. He did a couple of like shader texturing ones. So it's been like a really nice mix. And then for the most part, Carlos has been working on the pages to one of the illustrated books he's doing, and then I was doing some like character freelance stuff, which I'm actually going to finish up tonight. I got one more to do, so I was gonna and I may even incorporate the fun prompt just as an idea. And then after that, I was planning on moving on to kind of a long-term thing. I wanted to do kind of not quite a graphic novel. It's more of a novel that is graphic. If that makes sense. It's not like panel to panel. It's like it's mostly text, and then there's going to be like an overall big illustration per page or every other page or something like that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Darwin Cook and his work? Yes, I think he recently, well, maybe not recently, but he's passed a couple of years, or maybe a year or so ago.
Oh, cool. This is nice.
I hope I didn't mess up by saying that he died, but I think he what was the name of that book? I've got it around.
He died in 2016.
Okay, yeah, he worked with Bruce Timm on Batman the Animated Series. I think that was like kind of one of his big things, and he got into comics. So you can tell he had that sort of old school kind of, it's kind of Bruce Timmy, Tim Sale kind of style work. Really, really great stuff. But his storytelling. So he's done this. He did that Justice League sorry, you guys are gonna see me for a second here, but there's that awesome New Frontier, this huge, massive beast of a
wow.
book, which is amazing. But his storytelling was just so good. And I mentioned that because he did this book called what is the name of it? So many books. I always keep forgetting the name of his book. But Jennifer, it was recently it was made a movie a couple of years ago. Jennifer Lopez was in it. I think Jennifer Lopez and someone else. I think it was a terrible adaptation but it was basically, he made a graphic novel of an existing novel, and it was not a graphic novel really. It was sort of like a novel with graphics in it, exactly how
Okay. Okay.
I think you'd probably dig. I don't know if you dig his style, you definitely would dig this. I'm
gonna have to
got it somewhere here.
find it.
This is
Richard.
Where?
Let's see if I can't find what's that?
It's called Parker. So if you check out
okay,
Parker the Hunter,
Richard Starks Parker.
Yeah. So if you check that out, it's got. I mean, it's pretty graphic-y actually. So it's still more graphic than novel, but
yeah.
But when
obviously
yeah.
I mean, obviously, the intent is to share the artwork, so I think I'd have quite a lot of graphics in it, but
yeah. It's a neat idea. But yeah, he lays things out a lot in a way where there's like
a lot
of pages of really heavy text and just a couple of drawings on the side and things like that. But he's got this very retro vibe to his work.
It's like this film noir kind of real old school.
Yeah, exactly. And very, very much so. And his thing was that he never embraced. He never liked the internet. He never embraced the internet. He didn't like having his work on the internet. He didn't have much of an internet presence. He just, I don't know. He just didn't kind of gravitate to it, and he was very old school. But anyways, yeah, definitely. Darwin Cook is very cool to check out.
I will definitely do that. I'm looking for a lot of inspiration because the premise and the part of the reason I want to do it in that format, that it's, I don't want to say sparse illustrations, but not overloaded, is also because of the content. Like I really like to. I've done a couple of illustrated books, and I often want to mimic kind of the thematic principles or kind of, the storytelling device within the artwork itself. And I don't just mean like, obviously if it's about a witch, I draw a witch, but like if there's some kind of thematic principle, like I like to play with negative space a lot, and kind of like the emptiness that creates, and kind of juxtaposing contrast, and then that itself kind of becomes a character, much in the same way like a film noir would utilize the city or the shadows as part of the character telling. Because I don't want to give away too much of the premise, because I want to kind of save that for the show as I'm unraveling it and kind of showing it. But the general premise is that there's been this kind of cataclysmic whiteout, per se, that some sort of post-apocalyptic thing has happened and has just like wiped all of the imagery, for lack of a better word, off of the planet. So everybody's blind or whatever, right? And then people start waking up, and they have to start kind of reformulating the physical world around them. So it's kind of, remember that great scene in THX when he's like in the white room and the guys are like beating him with the pole and stuff?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like that, where like this character will kind of come out of nothing, and it has a very like kind of mythical type of Genesis style feel to it, where it's about a guy who kind of comes out of nowhere and then has to figure out the world around him. So it's very much playing with the negative space of a blank page, and then like an object will be there or something like that. So as the story goes on, it fills up. So that's kind of why I wanted to use this style as part of the storytelling device.
Yeah, that's actually super cool. The idea of just of using, just using that idea in and of itself as the way you're kind of constructing the page, designing the page, and the way you're sort of building the visuals within the story. I can totally see that work. It kind of gives it purpose. It definitely gives it more of a.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be fun. I did actually I don't have a copy of it here, but I did the first illustrated book I did, which I never really did like a large run print of it. I only had like 20 or 30 made. It was basically that premise, but on kind of a small scale. It was about this family that was not caught, but living on an island. So it was kind of this, illustrated black island on an otherwise empty page. And so I used the empty page as kind of the ocean or the void in which they live in, right? And then because they lived on this island, the family was afraid of going out into the void and all this stuff. And then something basically happens that forces the father character off the island. He has to go search for food. So I use that sort of as a storytelling device of him going out and searching the emptiness. And so this is kind of basically a riff on that, but like on a much bigger scale. I really want to make this into kind of like, that was just like a one-off small fable style short story. And this, I want to kind of use that same concept, but like tell a full, like a full epic out of.
Oh yeah. Is that, is that anywhere? Is that published anywhere? Did you self-publish? Do you just have it?
That one, I didn't fully go down the road of really anything other than like having a short run printed, and I want to have more printed. I just haven't really decided how, or like, because I had like the Pirates one made, and then I had there was like a poetry one that I did of the mobsters, where I did little articles and stuff, little articles and poetry are like shorts about each character.
Okay. Yeah.
So those two are out there, but no, I don't know why. I never. I never went anywhere with it. So
yeah. The idea of how you're kind of talking about building a story is sort of reminds me a little bit of how I kind of go about sketching myself. I like if I'm exploring like a character for a personal project or something, and I don't, I'm terrible at keeping sketchbooks, but I typically have like draw on like say 11 by 17, like larger piece of paper that allows me to kind of just jump around the whole thing. And I'll start to kind of just make up this character and sketch and stuff, and I'll jot notes down and write things that are coming to my mind as I'm sketching this character out, right? And so what the page ends up being is sort of more text than drawing in a way, but it's kind of sporadic drawings where I'm kind of envisioning, all right, this is my character, and I start to kind of build the idea of this character, and then I might pose him or her out in some kind of scene that I'm just coming up with at that moment in my head. So it's sort of storytelling, but not really storytelling. And I'm just kind of jotting down these, notes of what this character might be. And, I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of similar, though. I just kind of have drawings kind of sporadically laid out on this page, and then just a lot of text and blurbs and stuff written out,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I always used to see like the old school artists' sketchbooks, and it's always interesting to see like how different folks work. Some it's just like a page full of like a dozen heads of the same character, but like slight variations, different shapes, whatever. And then there's the ones where there was like the big lengthy like descriptions or like brief story ideas were always really cool, because it's like you could see all the potential in these characters.
Or you got to blur them out if you're going to publish them or something. If you're going to put them up if you don't want spoilers. But so sort of like that row down where that chick's kind of grabbing the steering wheel sort of thing, just those rough sketches. Like, so this is sort of an example, even though it's on a Cintiq, where like I'm sort of just sketching out these shapes and kind of coming up with this character, and you don't see a lot of it. But over on the left, I'll have like a couple of paragraphs of ideas, plot ideas, or like, scenarios or scenes, stuff about the character in general, just, stuff like that. But yeah, that's I think something like that is really cool. Would be really cool to see. Story-wise, like actually having a coherent story put together where you're really kind of utilizing these you know, it allows you to really play with a lot of, you know, different panels, or kind of um, just build a story in a very unique way, I think.
So you're almost thinking like you using that methodology of kind of free form thinking as part of the storytelling.
Well, you know, to be honest, as much as I want to, and it's you know, I really do want to start working on more, or flesh out more of my ideas, and work on full stories, and actually get them completed, because I
Yeah,
fail. Like I'm usually always failing. So and it's because my mind is I was I got this idea I want to flesh out. I want to work
yeah,
on this, I want to work on that. And usually, and I know I feel like maybe a lot of people have this issue, is um, when I work on something, the idea is, all right, I'm going to keep this now as simple as possible, because the goal is to get it done, right? So
yeah,
that's what I sort of
yeah,
pare it down to. But every time I start working on it,
yeah.
without fault, I start to flesh it out more and more. And it gets bigger and bigger and
It
bigger.
blows up. Yeah,
I'm,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I'm back to square one, and I'm like, but I like the idea. You know what? I'm going to shelf that and start on something else that's small,
Yeah.
and then I'll start something small. Same thing happens all over again.
Yeah, that I don't know about you folks in the chat room, but that same thing plagues me pretty bad. I mean, to be fair, I've got a lot of other things going on, like professionally, and I'm trying to work that stuff out. But as far as my personal work, yeah, that's pretty much been the story of everything, and that's kind of what caused me to do the first two books. Is I was like, okay, how do I create some restrictions and a boundary for myself to not just set up like a nice simple premise, but prevent myself from letting it get, large, right? So I picked, a children's book, which is kind of industry standard, 32 pages long. And then I was like, okay, I know that's a limit of how many pages I'm going to do. And so I got to figure out how to tell a story in just that amount of time. And then on top of it, I want to do illustrations and writing that I can effectively do in a sketchbook, or I can do at my desk at work while I'm waiting for something, or, keep it very small and limited. So that's kind of why these like kind of limited black and white isolated drawings came about, with kind of limited text. And, surprisingly, I was able to like bang through both of those, I think from beginning to end in like less than 2-3 months. So it's like, it moved really quick to get it for a project. Like it's kind of surprising, but aside from those two, it's never worked out, because it's like, now this one I want to do, right? It's like, it's cool, it's a great idea, but I can see it already like building and building and building.
Yeah, and I think that's probably very, very common too.
Yeah.
Which is why most of my stuff usually ends up being they remain sort of in scribbled states, or just kind of very, loose character development. And then it's either that or some much bigger idea that I'm too afraid to tackle, because it's gotten too big, and I'm not going to do any justice, and I'm afraid to get it out there because it might be, judged or criticized in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know if that's more of like just a general creative mind, or if it's kind of more specific to folks who do like visual creative stuff. Because I know I have quite a few writer friends, and they don't. I mean, I know there's writer's block, and people have all sorts of ideas that just never. But I have quite a few friends that it's just like they bang through stuff and they just tell the whole story and it's done. And then it's like, okay, they've got this stack of pilots and short stories and scripts and stuff. And I wonder if there's like, if that's partially because we're more, at least I am, and probably you are too, are a little more focused on like the visual stuff. And so it's like, you're always doodling, and then it's like, then you draw another character, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but that could be a story. It's like, it's kind of naturally organic.
Yeah, 100%. I've had to, I think I do something similar where I get together. Well, we haven't in a while, but I get together with a couple of friends, and we kind of get together and do these sort of art jams, and kind of share projects and kind of what we're working on. And a big thing to tackle has always been story, and we just kind of throw story ideas around. And the one thing more recently that I've always told myself that I was gonna for sure lock myself into is a limited number of characters, right? Because you
Mhm.
start fleshing out a world, and then like, and a lot of my friends are the same way, and they're super talented, but they start getting into the story, and then they start world building, and then all of a sudden, like you've got all types of supplemental characters, and just it's backstory, and like it can get out of
Yeah.
control really easily. And I figured, like, man, if I just narrow this down, if I just keep a story to a couple of characters, good guy, bad guy, whatever, whatever is going to suit your basic theme, um,
Hmm.
the better. At least to try to knock out that first, go at a story. Just not try to do more, not bite off more than you can chew at that time.
Yeah, I think setting those boundaries is super important for,
Yeah,
I mean, for a project you're doing by yourself. It's like, I think that's kind of the reality of it, is that you're not a huge production house, and so you've got to have like some realistic,
yeah,
expectations about what you can actually accomplish all alone.
yeah.
I mean, unless you're like some particularly gifted person that can
Right.
just balance all that stuff. But I think that's true for most people.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
Keeping it doable.
I'm sure there are guys out there that can do it, and they're seasoned vets out
Yeah.
there that have maybe worked on as artists on other people's stories. Maybe they've started that way, and they've kind of gotten the hang of, or they've studied that stuff a lot more. Nothing. I mean, your process is your process. If you're doing it, you're doing it. I've got the hurdle of never finishing something, so it's sort of, the idea is to just keep it as tight and compact and completed as possible. If it's if that means a 30-page story with 2 characters, then so be it.
Hmm.
Whatever's going to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why these folks, these like one man shows, like, I mean, there's like Bill Plimpton, and yeah, I mean, there's obviously plenty of writers. I mean, if you think about like how long it takes J.R. Martin to write a Game of Thrones novel, it's like he's almost like notoriously never going to finish that stuff. And it's like he's
Yeah.
got thousands of characters that are, these books are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. So
Right.
it's like, there are the exceptions. I mean, obviously he's closed out quite a few of those novels. So, I mean, it can
Mm.
be done. But it's like, Bill Plimpton, like he puts out a short, like maybe every like 6 to 8 years. Like, I don't know how long it takes that dude to make one of these on his own.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, especially animation. I mean, that's where that's my background. That's where I come from, and that's what I love. And I should be working on a film, but in all honesty, the time sink on a film and the dedication requirement. Like, if I can't kick out a short story as a as a comic or a graphic novel,
Yeah.
I don't know if an animation stands a chance. Or getting something done. At least finishing the storyboard to an animation. And then animate sequences later, and flesh that out maybe into an animation. But I'm still dying to get back into doing a lot more animation as well. So.
Yeah, so there's like this. I'm sure you guys have seen this guy, Cartoon Box Animation. He's on Instagram. So this guy puts out an animation once a week,
Okay.
and I think this is I mean, to be fair, this is his full-time job. He actually makes money off of Instagram, and like he's got a YouTube channel. But so
1.7 million followers.
yeah,
There you go.
he puts out an animation every single week. But I think what you said is super important. Like, he limits the scope of his work. It's usually just like 2 characters,
Yeah.
sometimes 3 or 4, but usually 2. There's no dialogue. It's just like grunting and giggling.
Yeah, some pantomiming and things like that.
This one particularly has like a lot of reuse. There's like, he reused the exact same shot of them eating these grapes again and again and again. And he's got a little bit of a formula that he works towards. These shorts always end in kind of a specific way, right? So this guy gets killed by the watermelon. But it's pretty cool, like he's figured out kind of a one-man formula of doing it. And I think what you said is totally the key. He's set a scope of reality for himself and some boundaries.
right? It's sort of being a little, have some, you know, just having a little perspective and like being true with yourself and knowing kind of where you stand and kind of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and just trying to capitalize on that to get essentially to get something done, right? Because that's the whole idea here. We want
Yeah.
to create, right?
And I mean, to be fair, like, I don't think anybody needs to get down on themselves if they're not completing like 1-minute animations every week. Like, I think it's also, you just got to be honest with yourself. Like, what is it I'm trying to do? Am I just trying to fill a sketchbook? Cool. Then that's one thing.
Right.
So it's kind of just being realistic, not only about the expectations, but like realistic just about like what you want to do. It's like are you just trying to write? Are you just trying to create some characters? Do you want to actually produce animated content? Is it, you know, it's kind of figuring that out and then working backwards and finding some parameters that make it doable.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do a lot of things, and I think that keeps my mind, that keeps me running around like in a lot of different directions, unfortunately, you know. But
so what are you working on these days?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I'm just kind of, I was kind of MIA in Instagram land for a little bit. Had work sort of come down on me a little bit, so was working on some deadlines around the holidays, and then working on some other you know, personal things. But right now I'm just kind of back on and sketching and just trying to get some mileage under my belt again. Got some ideas to start kind of trying to put some sort of book together, sketchbook, but I'm or, you know, art book of sorts. But nice. I'm always trying to flesh out ideas more and kind of hooking up with friends and trying to work on these concepts or these ideas, these stories, and so I'm hoping to sort of jump back into that a little bit now as I'm starting to warm up, you know. So
is that like the, I don't want to say short term, mid-range goal is to do like a collaboration of some sort?
Yeah, and to be honest, not even necessarily a collaboration. Yeah, just the solo route, because it's sort of like understanding. It's been so long, and just sort of understanding myself and making sure that I can sort of tackle something myself. I think at this point, it's more of like flexing, you know, trying to work on like flexing that story muscle a little bit. Like, if you can't tell a decent short story in just in like 4 pages, you know, if you can't come up with something simple, just board out something simple in like even 4 panels, right? Or if you look at like a political cartoon that does it in just 1 panel and kind of tell something, you know, like start practicing these things, start trying to kind of tell stories within 3 panels, you know, like set up and punchline at the end with like just some sort of middle panel, you know, that transitional panel in the middle, and keep it simple. Like really just, and this is just all just sketchbook stuff that, you know, I try to kind of have been trying to mess with, and, you know, just trying to tell these little gag stories. And that's almost what you can do, right? With 3 panels is just some become kind of gag.
Yeah.
But it's good practice, you know, if you're not used to telling, or if you're uncomfortable telling stories and things like that. I don't want to try to tell an epic before I know that I can, you know, break down a scene or something, you know, or, so the closest I've probably ever gotten to that sort of stuff is just boarding out scenes or sequences for animation, you know, and even still, that's not really a full-on story from start to finish. You know, I'm not telling this whole tale of, you know, where a character has his arcs and he's changing from beginning to end and all this stuff. It's, you know, it's sort of just, all right, I'm going to board out this cool action sequence or something, or, you know, just kind of get my rocks off in some sort of way, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier in terms of like setting the expectation of what it is you actually want to accomplish. I mean, I don't, telling an entire complete story beginning to end doesn't need to be a goal. I think for some people it is. That's great. But I think, like you said, if you're just wanting to do a cool fight sequence, some like Bruce Lee dojo fighting animated scene, like just do it. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a story, you know, with beginning, middle, and end. Like
Right.
a fight sequence, is a story. It just doesn't have, you know, the traditional beginning and end. So it's like that can be like a super cool thing that is complete. And you know, it's like I've seen so many really cool things online that's like just a clip of something, and it's like it's done really well, it's edited really well, and you're like, man, that was awesome, I want to watch that again, or I wish it was bigger. Like that's what the best thing you could leave your viewers with, is like wanting to see more, right? So
yeah, very, very true. Which is why if I ever animate, like, I think my first project when I get back to animating something will seriously be like a 1 minute thing, you know. Super short, super short. So
yeah, I mean that's kind of where those the 10-second club bits were always so fun, because it's like it's just limited, you know, it's a piece of dialogue that you may or may not be familiar with, but everybody does their take on it, and in a way it's kind of like a self-enclosed, most of the best ones are, you know, are like self-enclosed little mini stories.
Yeah. Did they change their, are they like 20-second club now, or 8-second club? Like,
they did
or are they back to 10 seconds? I know they've been around for quite a while.
I mean, there's a big one called the 11. Carlos actually knows most about this, because
yeah,
no, this one goes to 11. The 10-second, I don't know why they changed it to that.
yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of weird, but
yeah,
that's a really good exercise, and that's kind of like, you know, the idea behind the fun prompts too, is to just keep people working. And Landon in the chats, you know, says that he thinks planning is underrated. Anytime I've sat down for an hour and actually written down each tiny step to a goal to get a project done, I've managed to finish the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think it's really true. I think sometimes we look at projects just holistically as a whole, and we're like, man, that's so massive, how am I ever going to accomplish that? And you get lost in the weeds really easily. But if you break it down and you have a little bit of planning, it becomes a lot less daunting, and you can attack each step, and then before you know it, you've got all the steps done. And that's kind of one thing I've learned after switching from, because I used to work in visual effects, and I would say that visual effects is like notoriously unplanned. Like that is just like, we'll do it in post, we'll just throw a green screen behind it, we'll figure it out later, right? And there's so many decisions that aren't made beforehand that they should have been. It's like they don't even know what the monster is going to look like, they don't know where it's going to go, maybe it's going to move faster, maybe it's going to move slower. It's like endless retakes and revisions in visual effects. And then it's like when I moved to TV animation, it's like everything is super methodically planned. I mean, it's back to the old school of how everything was boarded, everything was scripted, then it was boarded, then it was, you know, animate. Like everything is dot. It's got to fit into this really rigid, and in a certain way that's restricting, but sometimes restrictions are good things. But one thing I have noticed is the way that it's planned is so incredibly helpful in getting it done. It's like the amount of content we're able to get out, the way it's structured, is so much easier than these like endless, crazy budgets and schedules that a lot of the visual effects films had.
Yeah. Plus, I'd imagine for TV. So you're at DreamWorks TV, is that right?
Yeah.
So, and I would even imagine that for TV, I mean, the turnaround time has to be pretty quick too. Is that right, or?
Yeah. I mean, TV is really fast compared to, well, a lot of it's like staggered. That's kind of a big. There's many things running at the same time. Unlike with like a film, you know, I would work on a project for say a year and a half, 2 years, right? And that's just like a single film. So, and obviously bigger budget, bigger effects, you know, harder work. And then a TV show, it's like, okay, so one season was probably about a year and a half. So you're talking about 20, I mean, every studio is different, every order is different, but 20 to 30 episodes over the course of a year and a half, right? So that is a lot more content.
Yeah.
but it's staggered, right? So it's like you're working on one, and then that one goes out and moves on to the next phase, while then another one starts. So it's like at any given time, you might have like 6 or 7 episodes, kind of at various phases.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's everybody's loving this crazy dog cam. So I don't know what he's doing over there.
Yeah, he's playing with a pillow or something.
He's got a ball that he's digging at.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but
no, we were just talking about the speed and schedule of TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I brought it up for some good reason, because I had something else brewing in my head, just about process and Landon's comment up there
about being planning.
Yeah, about planning stuff out. I feel like really, I think when it comes to planning stuff out, I've always just been my own worst enemy. Like, I want to jump into that. It's like, yeah, I want to be drawn already. But to be honest, if I if I had stuff sort of planned out before I put pencil to paper or what have you, I'd have a better direction. And without fail, that's always the case. If I just take a little bit of time to plan, I feel like I'll like what I'll get out. I like the results a little bit more,
Yeah, it's funny because like obviously I think I do the same thing where it's like you want to get to the next stage. You want to like get to the part that you think is fun or whatever. The whole reason you're doing this to begin with. So it's like you skip over all of these other parts, and then inevitably you end up paying for it one way or another.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. I can only get too far with an idea before I just want to start drawing it, which isn't a bad thing. It just if you can curb that, the desire to kind of really have that stuff get out of control, before you spend too much time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just kind of the discipline of it. I don't know if that comes from like just a lot of repetition and getting into a rhythm of how stuff is supposed to work, or if it's like you have to actively, actively like be mindful of it and be like, okay, no, slow down. I got to go back to the planning phase or whatever. But
yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways to skin that cat. Is that how the saying goes? We're skinning the cat? Yeah. So have you paid, or have you ever checked out Doug TenNapel's podcast, or sort of his stories? I don't know if you're familiar with Doug TenNapel.
You know what? I am not. Doug TenNapel.
I guess he's best known for Earthworm Jim. That would probably be his claim to fame.
Nice.
And he does. He's done tons of graphic novels. Very prolific in the sort of the Scholastic sort of, the publisher. They publish all his novels, and he kind of basically, I think he kicks one out a year almost. I want to say.
Oh wow.
I think he's up to like 12 or 13. He's been doing this for years. Well, he has a really cool podcast, and he talks a lot about story sometimes and comics. And there was one, you can find this on YouTube too. He has this story approach. You were talking about sort of biting off small chunks, not getting sort of inundated with this massive story that you have in front of you, thinking that it's impossible to finish. He has this cool approach where he basically takes like the 3-act idea, right? You're assuming every story has this 3-act structure, and he keeps breaking his story down into 3. So he looks at the whole story, and then he basically figures out his 3rd act. So he knows, first thing he knows is how the story is going to end, because you need a purpose to tell a story, right? So he figures, right, I need that 3rd act. And then he figures out what the complete opposite of that 3rd act is, and he writes out the 1st act, because you want that change, right?
Oh, right.
And and then 2 is the journey into getting from Act 1 to 3. So then what he does from there, though, is he'll take Act 1 and he'll do the exact same thing. He'll break that down into 3 acts, and he'll work out that first act into 3 acts. And he does that with Act 2, and he does the same thing with Act 3. And he keeps doing this. So he's just basically subdivisions of acts. And and he just keeps breaking it down until he has, you know, X amount of pages that he's working towards, or until he feels that he's fleshed out this story as well as possible. But I thought that was a very, very cool way of just dividing up. You know, it was just a process that made sense. You know, it's, you just keep dividing and dividing and dividing until you've sort of hashed out all the details to the story, instead of sort of overwhelmed with how big a story might be getting, or where do you go next with the story.
Yeah, that sounds for any of you guys out there that are looking for story or writing inspiration, there's a book, a guy named Robert McKee, MCKEE. He did a book just called Story, and it's very much that same process. It's kind of like a series of breaking down story, and then back and forth, and always wanting to feed the end goal, you know, with smaller versions of it. So like kind of his thing is, say your theme is, I don't know, how much it sucks to lose a lover, right? And then it's like, so then you break that, if that's the end of your story, and the guy, it's a tragedy, the guy loses his lover and blah blah blah, then you break that down into the 3 acts. And exactly like you said, he does this thing where he kind of alternates with opposites, but he goes further than that, and like kind of explaining how it's most obviously you want to build conflict, you want the back and forth, but he also likes to write about how, like, when you stage a scene or an event, or even props or characters, anything that's happening in the scene, it wants to be like a subcosm or a microcosm of the larger story, right? So it's like you want to find a metaphorical situation or event or prop or whatever that sort of helps push the theme forward. But yeah, he does that same kind of thing where it's like you start the second act with the opposite of the first act, but even within the first act, it's like each scene is sort of ping-ponging back and forth. It really makes a lot of sense. And he's like a huge advocate of, speaking of planning, he's a huge advocate of like getting out like index cards and like breaking it down and finding out where the key points are, and then finding the opposites. And like, it's like a whole planning event, but he guarantees that like by the end of this, you're going to have an epic, amazing script or whatever. And it's like, I really loved the book and I took a lot from it, but like I've never then again, I'm not really writing screenplays, but I've never put it that to use in, like, say, a graphic novel or anything. I think, to be honest, it's the same thing we're talking about. It's like I get to that index card and I'm like, screw this, I want to start drawing. And then I chop myself a bit.
Or there'll be a story bit, a very important story plot or something, and I'll be like, yeah, but I don't want to draw that. I want to draw something.
Right. Like, that's boring.
Yeah, but yeah, that's cool. I write that down. Check that out. You say he's a screenwriter, though?
Yeah, he's I can never remember what he. The funny thing is he didn't. I know he's like consulted on a lot of stuff, but his IMDb is like not terribly impressive. Like, he wrote kind of like some weird stuff that nobody's ever really heard of. That's like he was like on The Simpsons for a little while, and then like but all the stuff that he actually wrote is, I've literally never heard of any of these. Abraham, Without Walls, Mrs. Columbo, and Double Dare. Because it's like his actual writing credits, I don't think that's really what he does. He's more of like these script fixer people that kind of comes in and fixes it without actually getting the credit. So I think he really works more as a teacher and a consultant.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the book is really fun. It definitely taught me just even just like how to think about the story structure is really good.
Yeah. One thing Doug Tenaple also mentioned was because you've got these, in his case anyway, he's got these stories, which usually, the idea is to finish this story in a year. So he has this idea when he starts working on it. One of the big reasons why he plans and he breaks everything down in index cards, right? And so every act is on an index card, and then all the details to that act are in different index cards. And he's just kind of basically moving, right, these things around, getting the story together. And he plans this all before he does any pencil to paper, because he wants to be sure that he's not wasting his time drawing something that doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
he wants to make sure that story is hashed out and that he knows exactly what he's planning and where he's plotting, because in his state, this is what he does for a living. So time is money, right? And he wants to make sure that he's not, essentially wasting any of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's like it's much easier to and actually one of my producers at DreamWorks always says, like, it's way easier to just quickly adjust it in Photoshop than it is to re-render animation and all this stuff. It's, the long and the short of that is basically saying, let's fix it now in the rough design phase before we make any hard decisions, so that we don't have to you go all the way back. And I think that's totally true. It's like yes, it seems like more effort up front to do the planning and to do the thinking and all that stuff, but it's like it saves you so much time in the end.
Yeah.
Because either you're, like you said, either you're doing a bunch of stuff you don't need to do, or worse, like you see the end product and you're like, oh man, I didn't really like how that worked, or I don't know why it's not working, and it's like
exactly. And that's essentially what he said too. He's like, and that's why he starts with Act 3. That's why he always knows how his story is going to end, because he's basically says, could you imagine working, spending a year working on something and you finally get to the end of it and you have no idea, like, it's crap. You've worked on something for 6 months and you don't know how it ends, or it's totally ended up being a piece of crap and you just wasted half a year working on this thing. So I don't know. Makes sense.
No, I mean, I think that's totally a valid thing. Like, why you don't want to get to the end of it and be like, well, that's
no good. Yeah. So is this what you're drawing now? Is that for a small commission or something, or?
Yeah, so I've been working with this company that does these sort of mystery solving walking tours. So they it's like an escape room meets a tasting tour, So and the whole thing is like solving these mystery, like murders or like gangster mobster things. And somehow they found me online and really liked the mob characters I do, and asked if I would design characters for them specifically for this I can't call it an event because it's ongoing for this tour. Okay. And so they basically they've commissioned me, this is the fourth round of characters. So the first time I did 4 characters, and the second one I did 5, and then this one they have like 12 they want, but I'm only going to focus on 4 first. So they give me like a premise of like what kind of a feel they want, and then like kind of it's just like a brief character description, like, hey, this is a restaurant owner that's an old Chinese man or something like that. That's all they'll give me, and then I just kind of go for it. And it's kind of nice because they give me carte blanche, like I just turn it in and they're like, cool.
That's the best when I mean, because they took you out and they saw your work, so they like the stuff that you have there, and you're able to just do what comes naturally or what you like to do, and they don't walk all over it too much. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a really fun project, and unfortunately it's like a local company in New York, so I have been unable to experience it. But they have a fun Instagram account. It's Food Done It, like Who Done It, but Food Done It.
Clever.
And so there's a bunch of folks on there that look like they're having a good old time. So that's kind of all that matters, is that that folks are having a good time tasting food. And then the whole point is that there's like some kind of a mystery or thing you're supposed to figure out. So they write these stories. Speaking of stories, they write these stories that incorporate all the restaurants and or the foods that they're going to go do. And then, like, you know, like say they're doing stuff about like spicy food. So then that was like the second round I did. It was like the spicy food thing, and there was a guy that was killing people with hot chili peppers. So I did this like, you know, this chili villain that, you know, had, and then inside all the drawings I hide the symbolism. There's like little small letters or certain objects that then they can use in their storytelling, so that the people who are playing can kind of look at the images and try and solve puzzles, basically.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I'm on the site now. I'm checking it out. They've got your drawings on there too, it looks like, on the website.
Yeah, they kind of sort of have branded it as this like kind of pseudo film noir kind of mobster thing. Obviously a lot of food pictures, but each story has like the characters involved, and then like who did it and who's guilty or who's a witness or whatever, and then it's pretty cool.
Sort of like Clue meets Saw.
yeah, kind of.
Without the saw.
It's like
meets Human Centipede.
Clue, well, I don't know about that one, but
yeah, sorry. Got carried away.
So yeah, they're kind of fun. But anyway, for this one, they've given me. They said, okay, we need 3 mobsters, and they didn't really give a description. They're just like, give me 3 mobsters. So I did on the last 2 sketch shows. I did 2 of the other ones. I did 2 male mobsters, so I did a female this time, and then I don't know, just kind of see what comes to mind, and that's what's kind of cool about it, is I can kind of do whatever.
Yeah, they let you explore. Just looking at some of the chat there. Yeah, they mentioned Jake Parker a couple of times. Yeah, that guy I feel is like on autopilot with that stuff, you know, like it seems like he's getting a lot accomplished, getting a lot done, and he's garnered a good following by just kind of being working hard and being honest and kind of just sharing his processes along the way.
Yeah, he's really made a business out of that. I mean, he's got SVS Learning too, along with Will Terry, and I mean, obviously this is his full-time job. Like he takes on freelance illustration. He does a ton of his own comic books and whatnot, and then he's got his own online tutorials and videos, and there's the learning classes. So he's really got it down to a science, and that's why what's kind of interesting about the whole process is like I do think that there is a rhythm that you can find. Like it's not a constant. You know, I think there's this kind of picture that people paint of creators as like, well, you know, the creative thing strikes them and they have to be in the right mood and they have to find it, and it's like that's clearly not true, because folks work in the creative industry at companies, right? So they have to go in and have to do it all day, every day. And it's like, if you establish a routine and kind of mimic that same thing for your personal work, there definitely is a rhythm to it. And I think you can find a headspace that is conducive for churning out stuff better than just kind of randomly trying to search for it. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yes, he's found it. I don't know.
Well, it's certainly been like he's done a lot. So
yeah. being prolific is a huge part of it. And I think just doing it. I mean, we talk about the 10,000 hours thing, and
Yeah.
just kind of doing it is honestly the bulk of the work. Just doing it. You're gonna put out a lot of stuff you don't like, but within that, there's gonna be a lot of stuff you do, and at the very least, you're gonna be learning good habits, learning shortcuts, learning new skills, so that when you do your next project, you're more prepared and kind of have it ready to go.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Just do it, which, going back to the story stuff is exactly what I try to keep telling myself. It's like, dude, quit thinking about it so much, and put pencil to paper and just start writing more, just start doing it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like where the like random exercises tend to come in handy too. It's like to just go and just see where it leads, and sometimes those like abstract ideas actually can like lead somewhere kind of cool. So what do you got working on?
I'm just sketching, really. That's all I'm doing as well. While we're talking, I figured you're in there zoning out. I'd come in and zone out too. So, yeah, just doing. I've been sort of working on just doing sort of a series of just the one I have here. I think it was like a recent post of mine where I've just been sort of really digging this 70s female fashion sort of stuff. So I've been sort of doing.
Yeah.
I've been sort of just doing these hybrid sort of old school Beretta TV Charlie's Angels sort of 70s inspired chicks with guns. Very low brow.
Yeah, no, totally.
Very
it's
low
like
brow.
a whole it's like a whole subgenre in itself.
Yeah. Muscle cars and chicks with guns, it's
totally. And I noticed the ones that you already have up on your Instagram, they definitely have like a specific kind of, I don't want to say style, but like specific kind of approach to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit different than some of your other stuff. And is that intentional, or are you finding that because you're working within a genre that's kind of like the 70s, kind of retro, it's got this vibe to it, that approach comes naturally just to making it feel part of that era? Or is it something totally more artistically driven and intentional?
Yeah, I don't think a lot. I'm not sure that a lot of anything of what I do is super intentional, other than just what I'm feeling when I sit down and what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't know. It's sort of tough. If something looks, sometimes I'll be trying to maybe channel something a little differently, trying to play or internalize some shapes that maybe I'm not, something new, so that it doesn't look the same all the time. So I'm always kind of trying to play, even though I feel like, I don't know, a lot of the times I feel I'm drawing the same stuff all over again, like over and over again. Like, oh yeah, I draw that shape all the time, or all my faces look like that, or I don't know. But it's a ton of it. I don't think is super intentional. The only thing that becomes intentional, all the stuff I post, is like how far I take it with some of the rendering, or that sort of approach. So these I've been wanting to keep a lot simpler. I don't know. Sometimes I guess sometimes I'll try to like make something look a little bit more comic booky and detailed, and then sometimes I'll try to go a little more streamlined with the shapes and push the shapes a little more. So I do find I'm a little all over the map with it, but I guess it just sort of depends what I'm feeling that day, really, with some of that stuff. So I don't know. I don't even know if that answers your question, but
no, totally. Because I noticed that some of particularly the like 70s girls ones, have this kind of angular shape to them, and kind of a simplified,
yeah.
look to them, which, I mean, you've definitely done before, utilized components of that in some of your other characters, even like the Marvel stuff, the fan art you did has some of that component, but this is like pushed even further, which obviously helps it feel more part of the era or the style you're trying to fit into. And so I was just trying to see like if that was intentional and like, okay, I'm going to try and create this era of characters.
Yeah, I guess in that way, yeah. These sort of have been intentionally maybe a little simpler. So in terms of the era, I think so. Like I look at these photos, like even these photos, these reference photos that I'm looking at now just by Googling, Googling this sort of stuff. It's all, I just see the shapes and it's like, all right, yeah, I just want to kind of try to capture, like, for instance, this one is sort of, this chick here with the black top is just sort of what I'm looking at while I'm drawing her.
I'm not seeing I don't think I'm seeing your other half of your screen.
Yeah, you're not, because I'm sharing the application window. But that's actually here. If I do this, I can kind of put her in there, even though this is like super small. But here you go. Yeah, this is
right.
Like kind of something I'm looking at, and so. So yeah, I see these shapes, and I guess that's kind of what I like about a lot of the fashion, the high-waisted stuff. I got this like triangle kind of at the top, these turtleneck shapes. So yeah, I am a little bit more focused on the shapes here and trying to like simplify some of it maybe a little bit more. Maybe I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just interesting because the minute you look for reference images from like kind of anything, it's like it's always interesting what stands out most about that. I don't want to say era because it's not just limited to that era, but era, genre, the topic that you're looking at, and it's like sometimes it's really distinct shapes, and then sometimes it's color or palette, and then sometimes it's like could be something material or something totally different. It's just really interesting to me. It's where it's like something some component that fundamental of design can like almost instantly define like a genre or an era. It's really kind of fascinating.
Yes. Another thing is with because what I love a lot about that era too is the film, and so in the films of that era, when you get that sort of that very rugged urban street kind of grain, the color palettes, its own color palettes, and like of all these like old cop shows or cop movies and things like that. I really dig the look to a lot of that stuff. That very much can inspire me to try to head in a certain direction with some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's like one of the best examples, probably something that was made in such a time capsule period, and also is one of the most iconic series. It's like Star Wars that has become this gigantic icon, and yet it was made fairly low budget in a time capsule period of the 70s. It's like those guys' outfits and that design and everything about that just reeks of the 70s, and yet it's like strangely futuristic and appropriate for what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it actually only gets better the older it gets.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it is very, the only thing Han Solo's missing is bell bottoms, I guess.
And there are designs in that the characters are just straight up wearing like bell bottom design, like, well, Lando of course, but like
Lando, yeah.
So like some of the like Empire the Empire is like just walking around the ships like are so like the haircuts and like the collar and stuff. It's like so it screams 70s. It's really fun.
Yeah. It does, but it works, right? It sort of fits.
It totally works. It absolutely works.
They've made it. And they sort of just kind of really freshened it up. Because Solo still had that vibe in his movie,
Yeah.
Still, you know, he still sort of kept that vibe, but kind of with a fresh take on it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how the newer films age. You know, you always wonder.
Yeah.
I can't remember what film we were talking about, but we were we were talking about the Spider-Verse and like how well we think it might age. Because it's like the Matrix was on over. I think it was over Christmas. I was home for the holidays and I was watching the Matrix, and man, that movie's so good. That original one, and like just how well it's written in stage. I mean, everything about it. Clearly, a lot of planning involved, all that stuff. But again, like I think that's very encapsulated, man. Like it's like screaming like 1999, and it's like it's leather costumes and like the sunglasses and like all that stuff that was like. Well, the weird thing about that one is like a lot of that was subculture stuff, and then it became mainstream because of the movie. But I wonder about that one, like if that will still have the same feel in 15, 20 years, or maybe it'll be like Star Wars ages and it gets better. See, it's like some stuff gets really bad and some stuff ages and gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll never know, I guess, until.
Yeah, not until we get there. But
yeah. Yeah, but I'm sure there's still people wearing their cross colors nowadays that think it's just never gone out of style, you know?
well, yeah, there's that.
Carlos is somewhere in having a glass of wine wearing his cross colored shorts.
And his two polos.
with the collars popped, yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's Carlos's birthday today, everybody. So folks out there listening, he's out having a good old time, taking the day off. Hence the reason I was really struggling with setting this up. But I got it eventually. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't.
No. I didn't know if I missed the link or. I was just telling before you jumped on. I was telling how frustrating any of Google products interfaces are. Like for being a tech company that like specializes in all this pioneering stuff. Like they just have some of the worst user interfaces that are just so clearly made by like programming nerds that don't really understand how people use. It's weird to me. I always struggle getting around YouTube, and it was like a Google. What was that Google? Well, they're pretty good now, but like all the Google Drive stuff, like Google Docs and stuff. Like God, sometimes it's like, what the hell? Just navigating that. But anyway, I figured it out. So we're good.
Yeah, so definitely not used to conversating much and actually getting much sketching done.
No, I know. I'm like spacing in and out. So if we're not making any sense to the listeners, it's just part of the price you pay for watching us draw.
part of the free price. I'm sure they'd much rather watch a bunch of sketches than my face. So.
Yeah, we've been trying to get Shiloh on the show for ages. Just to come and draw.
Oh,
in fact, Shiloh, you wouldn't even have to say anything. You can just we wouldn't ask you any questions. You can just
yeah.
Or you could get like a modulated voice, like a robotic thing to talk to her.
Do you have yeah, you're in Photoshop, right?
I am. You know, I've bounced around through various programs over the years, and this is the one I always seem to come back to. I don't know. It's just the good old standard. Because it feels to me, honestly, it feels the most like drawing on a piece of paper. It's kind of the most natural. I mean, it's gotten really bloated, and there's a lot of crap in it that I don't need or wish wasn't there. But
yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful program, and I use it to
yeah,
draw pictures on, and really,
yeah,
really, really simple color. But man, it can do so much,
no, totally. Yeah, I mean, I use it to do design work. I sometimes use it to edit photos. Like, there's obviously, it has a lot of things, but yeah, I still really like Procreate in terms of mobile drawing, but
Yeah, I've been
aside
getting a
from
little bit
that,
more into Procreate myself. Trying to understand it, like just basically get familiar with it, get comfortable with it a little more. But I feel like that playback function that it has is so great. Like
yeah,
I feel like that should be a standard in every, like Photoshop should
yeah,
have it.
it's crazy. Yeah, and it's amazing how it's, I don't want to say revolutionized, because I think that's a little strong, but it's really amazing how it's allowed instant access into a lot of different artists' methodologies and workflows. Like, it's so fun just to watch people set up a drawing and work through their thumbnails, or some people just go right at it. Whatever it is that they do, it's just really fun to see it, and it's like such a nice, compact, uniform way of viewing someone's work. Yeah, I agree. I think it should be totally a part of, like, and it's helpful for, like, me and my own work too. Like, sometimes, like, I play back a video and I was like, oh man, I totally forgot that I did it that way. And it's nice to, like, self-analyze and be like, oh, so that's, I do that a lot, or I have that weird habit of doing that. And
Yeah, it really is. I absolutely destroy myself in a lot of situations, and I'm looking back, I'd say cringeworthy, the amount of draw overs, because I draw over a lot, and I'm looking for shapes, and then I lay another layer, and I draw over, and I'm just constantly. It's a little bit more. Sometimes it comes easily, but a lot of the times it's like this painstaking process of trying to find the right pose, or messing around with the right stuff, and I'll play it back and I'll look at it and be like, oh man, find what you're looking for already.
yeah, it's like, it's funny to see, like, what stuff you get hung up on and, like, do 1,000 times.
Yeah, yeah, but it's great for that reason as well, because it sort of shines a light on that stuff.
So is this a 70s fashion thing, or does it have a kind of a goal or a theme it's trying to head to? Because it's giving me a little bit of a vibe of, like, I don't want to say horror, that's the wrong thing, but kind of like a villainous character.
Yeah, she's definitely intense. She's gotten a kind of like she's enjoying whatever sort of, she's got this intense kind of, not too intense, but yeah, she's got this look like she's probably just murdered somebody, but is very pleased with what she's done. Yeah, I'm still kind of digging in that same same sort of idea here. Very simple, like, female 70s inspired, and guns, and just kind of sticking to my guns there with that. And yeah, let's see if trying to just kind of get more of just do more and more of these, just try to stick with it. And pinups is always like, pinups or like female characters have always been something that's just, for me, has been some of the most fun things to draw. So I like to just, I think I've gotten away from it a little bit more recently. So kind of jumping back in a little bit more and doing that. It's fun for me,
Yeah, and it's interesting how, like, sticking with a theme, what that produces, because I was doing the mobsters for, God, that was like over the span of, like, 3 or 4 years that I was doing all those. I did, like, I think 100. By the time I finally called it quits, it was like, I think I did 120 12 of them. You know, it was just like one a week or whatever, and then I wrote like a little story or whatever. But it's interesting. Like, again, we were talking about restrictions and confines and parameters earlier. And I mean, a theme or a genre is in a way, you know, exactly that. And it's just interesting, like what kind of creative stuff comes out of that, because you're forced to work within this limitation. It's like I was like, okay, I'm only doing mobsters, but it's like that only gets you so far. So then you're kind of like really creatively trying to figure out how to work other concepts or other characters or other ideas into that theme, right? So it's like I was doing some, there was a period where I was doing some robots. I did like an alien, but like they were all mobster-ish themed, you know? And it's like, it's really interesting, like when you're kind of forced in that environment. So doing 70s girls, like as a kind of a repeated theme, I would suspect has gotten some like really interesting things, or you've learned some like new cool things that you probably wouldn't have thought of like right off the bat.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I think little by little too, when you start to do that sort of stuff, you jump in and you start to learn about that topic a little bit more. You know, you start to internalize maybe some of these shapes and colors of in my case, you know, of the fashion or whatever. In the case of mobsters, like mobster history, or maybe, you know, and actually this is sort of a way to kind of get into just drawing guns more, because I'm terrible at drawing guns. So I can at least practice, you know, drawing guns and different guns and how a hand might hold a gun. So there's a lot of
That's interesting.
out of that sort of stuff, you know. Um, just depends how you look at it. But you're right, narrowing it down to sort of a theme allows you to give you, you know, it gives you something to draw, but you have a lot of room there to play with in that one little theme, you know, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it is really nice. I find even though it's restricting, in another way, it's liberating. Like it's like you know exactly what you're getting into, and you push those. You still push the boundary and push your limitations, but it's like it's kind of in a weird way nice to have. You know, you don't get as overwhelmed. And it's interesting you said the whole thing about like starting to learn more about the topic, or you know, internalizing it, because it's like there is a lot of, obviously all of this stuff art wise is related to history and like past events and past art movements and like whatever was happening socially or politically, like all of that is intertwined. And it's really kind of fun and interesting, like the stuff you pick up and learn, and then that kind of spawns new ideas. But also like you start having a greater appreciation and understanding of like why color palettes or shapes or things were done. And sometimes it's 2020 vision and hindsight, because it's like you can look back now and say, well, obviously that's the way things were at that time because of all these reasons. And you know, they may not have known that at the time, but it's really cool to kind of see it from that removed view.
Yeah, I feel the more I personally try to do that and learn about a little bit more about those things too, the less of an imposter I feel like, you know, like, so just imposter syndrome sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, I'm just kind of copying something, or I'm doing something because I like how it looks, but I have really no idea what it's about. It's, you know, you're taking the time to kind of really know something or understand it.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a really important point, because we've talked on the show a lot about how folks could start by copying. That's like one of the easiest ways to learn, is just to kind of break down somebody else's work. But I think that actually gives it more validity than anything else. It's like by doing that, you start to literally understand it, and then it by copying, you become less of a copier, if that makes any sense. You know, it's like you start to understand it, you start to absorb it, you start to become knowledgeable in it, and then you can create ideas or work within that style or that genre or that era, just because you have the knowledge of what makes it tick.
You sort of, you know, just like any just like any language, right? You have to, you always start by mimicking and internalizing these things before you even really start to understand the whys. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we're talking way before we even start to learn what the heck the words actually mean. And it's I think it's the same way with drawing or music or any of that sort of stuff. It's all a language, and we kind of learn by what we see, and we copy, and um, that in turn becomes all our inspiration, and then we internalize that, and we kind of come up with our own vocabulary in a way.
I think that's an amazing way of stating it. Yeah, I think it is a language, and it's learning. Yeah, I mean, ditto. But yeah, kind of like mimicking the sounds, mimicking the rhythms, mimicking the techniques, and then because you have that, you can push upon it and build upon what was there before you. I mean, everything kind of is built upon something prior, so it's like you can't just pull something new out of your ass and like have it be meaningful unless it had some foundation of where it came from. Hey, Joey Wall, welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even some of the, and going back to music, and even some of the greats, they've all ripped stuff off.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's actually where some of the new like best stuff has come from. It's like
Yeah.
it started as effectively like a rip. I mean, I'm sure everybody watched Bohemian Rhapsody, like just because it was an Oscar film out there, but like,
yeah,
there's actually that very concept is in there. There's a whole sequence about how he kind of worked on and came up with that single, and like he literally was like listening to opera and was like, wouldn't it be amazing if we had like an operatic sounding rock song, and like he was mimicking like what the opera singers do, and like, okay, we got to have this section, and like he was analyzing the structure and kind of like how it, no, this is quote unquote the Sopranos part. You got to sing higher. Like he was literally just copying not that he was copying an opera, but he was copying the style of opera and like what made it what it was.
Right.
And then pushing it within his own boundary and his own wheelhouse, which made it kind of what it was.
Yeah. Make it your own, right? And then, yeah, just like Zeppelin and countless other cream or English rock bands that basically built their sound off the blues. It's like it's all very similar stuff. I mean, they took it, they learned it, and then they put their twist on it. Yeah, you see that too, and I think I'm very much fall into some sort of a visual category too. Is like I'm heavily influenced by guys like when Bruce Timm came out and was doing what he was doing. I think I was like 11 when Batman the Animated Series started, and that show pretty much kind of changed my life in terms of visually, like not only just story wise and what you could do and show on a TV show, the type of sort of the darker, more adult approach to TV animation, which was fantastic. But the character designs and that style just became the thing, and you see it. I mean, so many people. I mean, everybody just it just sort of became a thing where you saw. I don't know. You just see a lot of people just start to really kind of go head in that direction. And I think ever since then, I was always into drawing, and I always kind of struggled a little bit with realistic drawing. But when I saw that, oh man, you could really simplify these things and still it's still human, but it doesn't have to be super detailed like some of the comics that I would look at, or or some of the portrait drawings and all that that I would see. it's like, yeah, maybe I could do maybe some more of that if I practice, simplifying shapes and
Yeah, the I really like looking at all those graphics of like how character design had changed over the years even within a specific show, like how
oh
just
yeah,
because they made so many episodes and they needed to there were some of it
yeah,
I think was unconscious how it changed, and then some of it was intentional just to make them faster or cheaper or whatever. But like, I mean, you look at like how Garfield changed, or how
yeah.
One of my favorite one is how Tom and Jerry changed, like
Oh yeah.
the first few episodes, and how they had, I won't
Well,
say individual furs, but they had kind of, furs that I can just draw it. It's like he had his tail, and then they had like individual little kind of things that would poke off from the side to indicate fur. And it's like by the by the fifth or sixth season, it's like all that stuff was gone, and Tom became like a really smooth kind of retroized,
yeah.
efficient drawing, which is cool and it has its own look, but it's also like it's interesting how practicality and how requirements of production also affect style and affect the
The-
art feel.
Now for that, did some of I don't know how many seasons, but like didn't I want to get this wrong, and I'm going to get this wrong. So, but I thought that for a couple of seasons where he wasn't originally involved with it, but didn't Chuck Jones start getting involved with Tom and Jerry, and that sort of also was kind of a change in their design or their look, or at least for those episodes.
Yeah,
For a
well,
couple of
yeah, Chuck Jones came in after kind of the original like Hanna-Barbera things, and obviously
yeah,
Chuck Jones has his very own distinct style, but
exactly, yeah,
um, yeah, but I mean, Hanna-Barbera was also like, it's weird actually, because Hanna-Barbera was pretty well known for doing like efficient, simple, cheap cartoons, right? Like that was kind of their whole thing, is like, we're going to produce all of these things and just crank them out.
yeah,
They kind of invented that like repeating, never ending background, right? For that very reason. Which
yeah.
is funny that the original ones actually had a lot more detail and a lot more um, effort in the drawings than the Chuck Jones ones did, because you would think it would just kind of be the other way around, just because of what Hanna-Barbera was known for. But yeah, he came in and it took on that real like Warner Brothers-y look.
What was
Yeah, they're really cool. And like the original ones when he was still what was Tom's name? Jasper, when he was like a cameo appearance in a couple probably racist at this point. I can't remember, but I don't remember the exact episodes. But for a while, he was just like some woman's house cat, right? And then it became this spin-off into Tom and Jerry. And I think at that point he was just Jasper. But there's like individual hairs, and he had like fuzzy eyebrows, and um,
Yeah, yeah. Here's two. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so
There you go.
yeah, the Chuck Jones up top here. This was like um, the older Hanna-Barbera,
Very,
probably one down here. But I'm sure, and even still, like now that you bring it up, yeah, definitely. There's definitely stages. Yes, that's right. Yeah, holy cow. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. It's like it
Mhm.
just it has just like an older feel to it. It's really kind of fun to watch how
Yeah,
this
it's
stuff
sort of like that
evolved.
Tex Avery stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Um, yeah, The Simpsons is another one, right? That how they just, and that was
Yep.
very on purpose. That was very thought out, and as a move to be much more efficient and try to kick out more episodes a lot faster. Um, but I think after season one, or after those shorts from the Tracy Ullman show, after trying to do a season with those character designs, I think most of those animators are like, wait, how is this guy supposed to look?
Yeah.
How's it supposed to look like? This is, and so they're like, no, Bart has 9 spikes on his head. And
Yep.
this is how Homer's two strands of hair look when he's standing sideways, and when he's profile, when he's looking at you. All these rules started coming into play because like we need to know how to draw these guys, man.
Yeah, I mean, not just for a matter of consistency, but certainly for efficiency. But I mean, I think, at least I mean, everybody's got their own opinion, but I think Simpsons changes were kind of for the better. The original look was not particularly appealing.
I think most people would probably agree with you. I know I do. God bless Matt Groening, but yeah.
Well, we are creeping up on 11, so
Great, man. Well, this was fun.
yeah, it was. I'm glad we got one in anyway, and I was glad you were able to come on. Good little chat about process and whatnot. So I know we've done it before, but if people are looking for you, where can they find you?
Yeah, man. If you're interested in seeing some more of my arts, you can mainly find me on Instagram at Scribbler80. And yeah, all my info's there. And you can just check out what I'm doing there.
Cool. Thanks, man. I'm sure we'll see this completed character up there fairly soon.
Yeah, no doubt. If I get around to finishing it up, I'm sure. I'm sure I will. It'll happen.
You can post sketches.
Yeah, I will post sketches.
And I am Sketchbook Jack. You can find me sketchbookjack.com and on Instagram mainly. And then again, this is the fun prompt this week is a jittery cobbler. So be sure to go through the process of tagging us. We missed quite a few this week, but thanks to Shiloh for being awesome, for always forwarding them to us. We were able to catch most of them, but be sure you actually tag us or with the tagging system, not just the @ symbol, because it makes it way easier for us to track them. And we'll share you and talk about you on the show and point fingers and laugh. No, I'm just kidding. We always like seeing the stuff. There was a really good turnout last week for the whale farmer. So be sure to check those out on Instagram. We're instagram.com/sketchzonepodcast. And we are at sketch.zone, and we're here usually on Thursdays at 9 p.m. And hey, we've got a surprise guest. And we are at sketch.zone, and we're here usually. But we're getting an echo. You got to shut off your pipe back.
I know. I'm brand new to this. You have to forgive me.
You look like you're in a basement.
I'm outside. I've been kicked out of the house.
Oh yeah, there's a tree. I see it.
Yeah. I actually came out because there's music playing and stuff, and I wanted to hear what you guys were talking about. And then right when I walked out the door, like the neighbors are yelling, like I'm like, what the hell? I'm gonna go back inside.
Happy birthday!
Yeah,
Thank you.
Birthday!
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I spent the entire day wine tasting.
That's a good way to spend it.
That's not a bad way.
I'm ready for bed though. Thanks, Javier, for coming on, and thanks Jack for holding down the fort.
Yeah, it was good fun. We had a good little chat.
Yeah, but we didn't bore too many people.
I finally have something to watch later.
Awesome.
If people are looking for you, since you're here, where can they find you?
San Luis Obispo.
Oh,
nice.
That's road trip.
Passed out in a vineyard somewhere.
Yeah. Drunk, half naked, in a cop station.
Where's Noelle when you need her? Those comments.
No, but really,
but the neighbors are yelling too, and they're drunk. So we're all the same.
You can't hear them, so you're good.
All right, guys. I just wanted to drop in and say hi and thank you, guys. Thank you, Javier, for coming and hanging out.
Thank you guys for having me, as always. Again,
we're gonna have you back again soon, huh?
We'll do it. We'll do it. I'm always down. You know, I'm always usually here sketching around. So
Yes.
just shout out.
Quick little shout out to Landon. I saw them comments.
Yeah, we had some Landon and Joey Art Wall and Long Arm, and we had Shiloh in for a hot second. And who else did we get in there? I'm sure there was others, but
Yeah, I saw
thank
Joey, I saw.
Thank you all for your constant participation and, of course, the fun prompts. That was a good turnout this week. So
Awesome. All right.
Thanks all for tuning in. We're going to sign off as well. This has been the Sketch Zone Podcast.
See you guys.
See you guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.
Bye.